welcome back. Welcome if you're new. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm Tiffany and this is our small town life. Today I am doing a canning video for you. I had several people request and ask if I would do a back to the basics, if you will, canning video, canning 101. So that's what I'm going to be doing today, and today's video will be focused on water bath canning. The two types of canning that I do the most of are water bath canning and pressure canning, and so my plan is to do a video on each of those things, but today's video is going to be focused on water bath canning. I feel like water bath canning is a perfect place to start if you are new to canning, and I'm going to be making some watermelon jelly today. I'm not going to show, I don't think I'm going to show the full recipe within this video. I'm just going to keep this focused on how I can and some extra information for you, but I will link the recipe down in the description box, as well as a playlist that I have created with several canning recipes, a lot of which are water bath canning recipes. And so if you need some inspiration for recipes, you can check out that playlist in the description box. Let me go grab my water bath canner real quick and I'll show that to you. This is my water bath canner, and I will have it linked for you, as well as any other tools that I use today that I can link. I'll have those linked for you in the description box. One reason though that water bath canning is great for beginners is you do not have to have a special pot for water bath canning, although this does make it very easy, and this is affordable, and it has the rack that goes in it. Any pot that's deep enough to get your jars in and have them covered by water, you can use. I water bath canned for a long time with just a regular old pot that I had because I could fit my jars in it and have them covered by water. What kind of foods can you water bath can? Well, anything, the pH is what we want to pay attention to here. And my suggestion is going to be that you search out trusted recipes. Ball has some great canning books, but search out trusted recipes. If you're going to water bath can, you want to make sure that the pH is appropriate for that. Otherwise, it will have to be pressure canned. Your vegetables, your meats, those kinds of things usually have to be pressure canned, and anything that you're adding vinegar, lemon juice, sugar to, a lot of those recipes can be water bath canned, just like my jelly that I'm going to be doing today. When you search out recipes, they will tell you if you can water bath them, and they will give you the appropriate time for water bathing, which we'll talk about more in just a minute. Right now I'm going to put some water in my canner, and I'm going to put it on my stove, and I'm going to make sure that my jars are all clean. Let's talk about our jars. You can get all sizes of jars. When it comes to canning, the three that you're going to see used the most are these jelly jars, pint jars, and quart jars. There are also two different lid sizes. So this is a wide mouth jar, and this is a regular mouth jar. If you're buying jars for the first time, usually they come with lids, but your jars are reusable as long as they're in good condition. So when you go to buy lids, just pay attention to if you need wide mouth or regular. I'm going to be using jelly jars today, and I made sure that these did not have any cracks in them. There were no chips around the rim, because that could cause them to bust in the canner. And if there's any cracks or nicks in the rim, that could cause it not to seal. So you want to make sure your jars are in good condition and that they're clean. And then speaking of the flats and rings, lids and bands, whatever you want to call them, these are, your bands are reusable, your rings are reusable as long as they're in good condition. Most flats are made for single use. Rebel canning is a whole nother topic that I'm not going to get into today, but Mamaw always told me, and I'm just sharing, that's what I'm here doing, is sharing how Mamaw taught me, is that if my rubber seal still looked good, I could use these twice. Just sharing that information with you. Most of these are made for single use. Now, Mamaw used to always wash these and then boil them and heat them up before she would put them on the jars. However, more recently, the recommendation has been to not do that, to just have them clean and put them right on top of the jar. Maybe it's habit, that I just can't break. Sometimes I will wash them and put them straight on. Most of the time I still put these in a pot of water and at least warm them up to start softening this rubber. Maybe don't get them too hot though. I don't know if maybe the rubber they're using now doesn't stand up to as much as what they used to, and that's why they're saying not to, or maybe they just say you don't have to sanitize them, because I'm going to be heating my jars. But I'm going to be heating my jars because my process today is going to be hot. I'm going to have a hot jelly that needs to go into a hot jar and then into a hot water bath canner. You want to try to keep your temperature the same across the board. So if I was putting something cold or room temperature in a jar, I would want a room temperature jar, room temperature product, and then just a room temperature water bath canner. You just don't want to shock your jars. That could cause them to break. And today I'm going to be doing something that's hot, so I need my jars to be hot and my water bath canner to be hot. And you can do that a couple of different ways. Sometimes I will take my jars and I'll put them in the oven on 250, and if they're in there for 20 minutes, that sanitizes them. Although if you're going to be processing something in a water bath canner for at least 10 minutes, it gets sterilized in the water bath canner. My process today for heating the jars is just because I need my jars hot so I can put the hot jelly in them. So I could either put them in the oven, and I do that a lot. Mamaw used to always put hers in her water bath canner. She would go ahead and put water in it, start heating it up, and have those jars in there in that warm water. So that's what I'm going to do today. And when I say 10 minutes in the water bath canner sterilizes your jars, that is for my altitude and anything 1,000 feet above sea level or less. A lot of recipes won't mention this, but there is a very, at least I have found, but there is a very easy diagram that will show you if you need to adjust water bath canning times based on your altitude. Most recipes are going to give you that basic 1,000 feet or less time. You can Google your location though, altitude for your location, and it will tell you very quick and easy what your altitude is. And there are some adjustments to make if you're over 1,000 feet above sea level, and I will leave that chart down in the description box for you. And the reason for that is because water boils at different temperatures at higher altitudes. The racks that come with these water bath canners, they keep your jars up off the bottom of the pot just a little bit, and that helps keep them from cracking and breaking. If you're just using a large stock pot though, I've seen people use, or you don't have one of these racks, I've seen people take these rings and use different things to tie them together and put them on the bottom. I've seen people put dish towels on the bottom of the pot to just have something where the jars aren't sitting straight on the bottom. These water bath canners though come with a rack, and so that works perfect. I did not cut my water bath canner on yet. I did not turn the heat on yet. I just have my room temperature water, room temperature jars, and I'm going to set those down in the water and let it all start heating up together. And some of these tools that you'll see me using come in a kit. Again, it'll be linked in the description box for you. I want to encourage you to start canning. Even if it means you can't have all the gadgets and tools and things, you can use things that you already have. I used tongs, although it was difficult. I used tongs for a long time, and these extra tools are incredibly, incredibly useful. But if you have to, use what you have. Just get started. So I'm going to use these, sit my jars down in my water, and then I'll turn the heat on and let it all start heating up together. Okay, that can start heating up while I get everything together for my jelly. This is one of our watermelons that we grew. Isn't it gorgeous? The real truth comes with what's on the inside though, right? work a couple jars at a time. And your recipes will tell you a headspace. That's the amount of space from the contents of your jar to the top. How much space you want to leave at the top. And there are some tools that you can get to help you measure that. There's one in that kit. I've just kind of gotten used to what that looks like. And I debubble everything. That's just running a knife around in it. Something like this, it's very liquidy. There's usually not any bubbles, but I just do it because I do that with everything. There are some things that you want to be very sure that you do that with to make sure there are no air pockets down in here. I'm going to take a napkin, taking a napkin with just a little bit of vinegar on it to wipe around the edge of the jar to make sure there's nothing there so that we get a good seal. Make sure it's nice and clean. And then this lid lifter is incredibly handy. I'm going to use this to get my lids and rings out of my warm water. I lost my original footage of putting this ring on my jar, so I'm going to use this as an example for you. When you put your flat on, you're going to put your ring on and you're going to fingertip tighten it. So you're going to take it and just spin it on with your fingers. I'm trying to do this with one hand. Just going to spin it on with your fingers, and then you're going to crank it just a little bit. You're not turning it real tight, just one spin to make sure it's on good just with your fingers. If you tighten it too tight and you put it in your canner, the air will not be able to escape out of it and your lid might buckle on you. Jars are in the canner and you want it to be fairly full as far as your pot so that they're not leaning and flopping over and falling around. It doesn't have to be completely full, but just enough that they're in there and they don't really have enough room to flop over. And you want to make sure that they're covered in water by about an inch to 2 inches. And then I'm going to put the lid on, and our processing time will start when this water starts boiling. Those jelly jars, so for example, those jelly jars for this particular recipe, I'm going to process them for 10 minutes once that water comes to a full boil. I'm going to let it boil hard for 10 minutes. Different recipes have different times, and again, if you're at a higher altitude and need to adjust, you can do that. Your recipes are also going to give you processing times based on what size jar you use. There's a little peek to show you we're boiling. I'm going to put the lid back on and start my timer. This particular recipe that I'm showing you today did not use vinegar, but because a lot of water bath canning recipes do, especially things you're pickling, I wanted to show you and make sure that you know that when you buy vinegar, make sure it says 5% acidity. A lot of people have said this year that they're noticing 4% acidity in vinegar, so make sure you get one that says 5%. And if a recipe calls for lemon juice like mine did today, it's recommended that you use store-bought lemon juice because the acidity of that is pretty, what's the word? Consistent. It's always consistent. So it's recommended that you use store-bought lemon juice. What? When my timer goes off, I turn the heat off, I crack the lid, and I let it sit for another 5 minutes. And if you have something in your jar that might siphon out if the temperature changes too quick, this can help with that. So I'm going to let this sit for 5 more minutes, and then we'll take our jars out of the canner.
Oh, that's so pretty.
Isn't it?
I won't have to take a jar of that.
I think it's gorgeous.
Do they taste it?
It is. No.
Bro.
I sat these on a towel, and I'm going to let these sit here for about 24 hours. You want them to seal, and some of these have already started sealing. There's a button on the top of your lid, if you can see that there, and they will suction down. So as they start to cool, they'll start to seal, and the top will suction down. On most flats, you'll hear like a popping sound, and that will let you know that they're sealed, and that button will be pushed down. So Once these sit here and have cooled, I can come back and check them, and if I push the top, it won't give. Now, if any of them don't seal, just put those in the refrigerator and use those first. I usually come back in about an hour to 2 hours to check them, because if they're going to seal, they'll seal in that first couple of hours, and then if any of them don't, I put them in the refrigerator. The rest of them I leave sitting here, and I think all these will seal. Most of the time everything seals, but I'll leave these sitting here for about 24 hours just to make sure that they stay sealed, that they're cooled, and then you can take these rings off because you don't need them anymore. You just have those on there right now to hold that flat in place. Once it seals, you don't need the ring. You can take it off and it can be stored in the pantry. I have some things over here that I'm getting ready to put in my pantry, and so I thought I would show you this. Once your jars have set and they've cooled, it's been 24 hours, you're ready to put them in the pantry. I told you can take these rings off. People comment sometimes about my rings still being on. Something that Mamaw always did was she just loosened the ring and left it sitting there. You could just take it off completely because this is sealed, but she would just loosen it up and leave it on until she needed rings, and then she would go and take them off. This isn't holding this flat on anymore when it's loose like this. If you leave it on, you leave it tight, you might have a false seal. Your band, your ring could be holding down the lid and it wouldn't really be sealed. But if it's like this, it's not going to do that, and it gives me somewhere to store them. I can just leave them on the jars till I need them. Never stack your jars on top of each other. Always leave them in a single layer. I also write what it is and when I canned it on the lid, because at least the month and the year, because you want to know when it was canned, how long it's been sitting there. And it's some things, y'all, even though you're like, oh, I'll remember what that is, when it comes down to it, you may not. So I always write on the top. Canning and preserving in general is always a learning process. I've been canning and preserving for years and years and years. I grew up around it. I've always been around it, always been a part of my life, and I'm still learning new things. So always do your research, always continue to expand your knowledge. And if something doesn't go right, if a jar breaks, if something doesn't seal, don't get discouraged, but use that as an opportunity to continue learning and expanding on that skill of canning, because no matter what, it's learning. I've had my fair share of things that didn't go right. More times than not, though, they do, and it's a beautiful thing to have shelves full of preserved food. I hope you found this video helpful and that it gave you some encouragement to start canning or to expand on your canning. And I hope you enjoyed spending some time with me today. I love you. I appreciate you. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, y'all.